Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Story, where we discuss what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Story. I'm very pleased to have Ellis Ross as a guest today. Ellis, it's just a pleasure to have you. I've been following your political career for about half a decade now. And I actually went up and helped your friend Dan Davies in the recent provincial election.
You're the guy. Ah.
I'm the guy. So you're running for leader of the BC Liberal Party. But tell us a little bit about yourself that maybe people wouldn't know.
I'm a big basketball fan, playing it, not watching it. I'm a big golf fan. Likewise, playing it. I like soccer. But more importantly, I like coaching a lot of people into not only succeeding in sports, but succeeding in life. Doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. I've helped so many people get out of prison, get in the right track, get them into school. I actually, when I was coaching the junior girls 17 and under team, parents would ask me to go and discipline their kids for not doing their homework or skipping school. So I'd walk into the high school. And when I walk into the high school, the whole hallway would split in half and everybody would go running away and saying, I don't know who's here for. Oh, no.
Wow. So
I took it very seriously.
You're a man of authority. You're a man who people, and you've earned that.
They knew if I showed up in high school, it was serious.
Yes.
Right? They knew it.
Yeah. Well, and you've earned that through competence and merit. And I know that you're a BC Liberal, so there's federal Liberals and federal Conservatives in your party. But I want to talk a little bit about what your philosophy of life is, which then informs your politics. Like, what would you say is the guiding principle of your life?
Well, given where I came from, I was born and raised in reserve. And probably when I was 14 years old, I realized I got no way out. I got no future. I'm going to be a drug-using, drunken wanderer of my streets. And so over the years after that, I quit doing drugs then till I was about 20. And then I started drinking heavily for about 10 years. But then, over the lifetime, I started learning things on my own, and other people would teach me. So if I was going to summarize what I think about today in terms of what I do, it's a pretty straightforward saying. If you can't help somebody, at the very least, don't hurt them. And I've done as much as I could to help everybody that I came across that needed help, that legitimately wanted help, that was willing to do the hard work it takes to get out of a bad situation. So that's basically my philosophy in the work that I do and in life in general.
Oh, I love that. I think that's the name of the episode. That's just such an amazing line. So I'm very interested in this because this is the part of the Canadian story that I feel like Canadians don't get to hear, which is the story of our First Nations. And so tell us what it's like to love this place that has hurt your people so much, but the land has been with you your whole, for tens of thousands of years. What is that like? I can't imagine it. It just seems so beautiful to me.
Well, it is because, let's be clear, the people of today did not hurt the Aboriginal people. This whole idea, the guilt complex of non-Aboriginals that they have to bear, that's not right. I mean, nobody should have to bear that responsibility. Whatever happened to Aboriginals 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was wrong. But it wasn't, that hurt wasn't made by people today. In fact, if anything, Canada has actually done more for First Nations than any other Indigenous population around the world. And we're talking since 1982. Yeah, it didn't happen overnight. And the way I grew up, it almost is part of your upbringing to ensure that we keep separate lives We got the Aboriginals over here, and we got the Canadians over here. So we got separate parallel lives. And, never should those two paths cross, because somehow we kind of despise each other. Well, over the years, I realized that narrative is wrong. It's not right. And it's not right that we should actually encourage that type of mentality. When in reality, there's a lot of non-First Nations in my family. I got a lot of non-First Nations friends. A lot of non-First Nations people did a lot of work to kind of help us with our social issues. So this idea that, somehow we should be separate is absolutely wrong, because Canada, BC, is actually a really great place to live.
Yes,
and
yes.
Regardless of our background, I mean, I went to China. I don't want to go back there again.
Right.
I've read reports where some kids in third world countries were living in dumps because they go there to collect plastic to sell in a market every day.
Yep.
And looking for food. I've read reports about women in different parts of the country that weren't really treated as humans. They're not allowed to drive. They're not allowed to have an education. They're not allowed to speak. I mean, Canadians have got to stop beating up on Canadians. You're not that bad. We're not that bad, no matter what you read in the paper.
Thank you for saying that.
Really good place this is a really great place to live and bring up your family.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I know that a lot of our listeners will. It's so encouraging, because I think there is a lot of guilt that we've been taught to feel, and it was wrong what happened. But to have someone of your stature, not only in your community but also in the Conservative Party, I would say, and in the Liberal Party, the BC Liberal Party, to have someone like you say, no, actually, this is a wonderful place to live. Like, it truly is, and we need to encourage one another in that.
Well, I grew up thinking that somehow we're separate. But when I first started council, 2003, the council brought me on as a first full-time paid councillor. But they didn't tell me what to do. The job description was whatever passed my desk that day. So in my spare time, I'd go down to our archives, and I read a lot of what happened to my people, which was freaking horrible. It was horrible. And so after a few weeks of reading the reports of what happened to my people, as well as Aboriginals across Canada, I just sat there one afternoon and I cried. The only time I've ever cried is when my two kids were born. I cried a lot when I was a kid, of course, but when my two daughters were born and my grandkids. But that day in the archives, I sat and cried. I was all alone. And then in the same day, in the same hour, for that matter, I got very angry, very vindictive. And I was thinking, all right, it's revenge time.
Yep.
I'm gonna make people pay for this. I'm gonna make government pay. I'm gonna make everybody I come across, I'm gonna make them pay. And so I went out there with this really aggressive attitude. A couple of days later, I sat and thought about it. What good is anger? What good is revenge?
Right.
My people are committing suicide. They're going to jail. Our kids are going into care. We're living in poverty. What good is revenge? It might make me feel more at peace, but what's it really going to do for the Aboriginals, and what's it going to do for the non-Aboriginals? I'm just feeding into that machine of hate, and I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be how we make the region, the province, and the country stronger and better. And so that's what brought me here.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. So
that's forgiveness.
Yeah. So you said, so how do you make it better? What is our path forward?
Well, Canada, especially BC, you've been on a really good path for the last from about 2004 to 2017, and it's really nothing that special came out of your governments and your leadership. It was nothing really extravagant. It was basically your governments telling the corporate world, saying, you've got to include the First Nations in your business plans. You've got to include them in a meaningful manner. And so my band back in 2003 was probably one of the poorest bands on the west coast of BC. Canada was threatening to come in and shut us down as a council because we couldn't pay our bills. we're in so much bad deficit. That's reversed now because we signed an agreement with BC 12 years ago on forestry agreements, so we could log and share in revenues. We signed an agreement with Rio Tinto Alcan, the local smelter, for remodernization, and we signed agreements with LNG. So nothing that really came from government, nothing really came from the non-Aboriginal populations. It was just this partnership with government, corporations, and ourselves got us to a point where my band really doesn't need government funding. We don't talk about suicides anymore. We don't talk about welfare lists. We don't talk about a lot of the issues we were talking about 15 years ago. Now we're talking about, what's next? Oh, my kid just got a mortgage in town. Oh, my brother went to Vegas for vacation. Oh, my $60,000 truck is good in the winter, but I just bought a $40,000 car for the summer. This is freaking amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing for an Aboriginal. And I just sit back and I'll give you one example. I was playing basketball at my gym, and we were just starting to see the money roll into our band, and our kids were getting jobs, and we're in a break in a basketball game. And we were sitting all on the bench, and some of the players I used to coach were all sitting there. And one guy said, man, am I ever going to get dinged with taxes this year? And they all started talking. And they all started kidding each other. And the other guy said, well, that's because you're single. You got to get a wife. The guy said, yeah, but I'm single, yeah. But I bought a truck. I want to buy a house. And you know what? If I wasn't making $125,000 a year, I wouldn't have gotten taxed so much. It's not right.
I love it.
$125,000. This is for a guy that barely finished grade 10. And I'm sitting at the bench, I'm at the side of the end of the bench, and I'm chief counselor. So I got up and walked over to them, all of them. Guys, what you guys just said, you make $50,000 more than I do, and I'm the chief counselor. Get over it. But I kind of think that's the kind of stories Aboriginals should be telling today.
Yeah. Do you see that happening across the country?
No.
Why do you think that is?
Well, mainly because a lot of First Nation communities really, for whatever reason, don't take advantage of the economic opportunities that are placed in front of them. And the other reason is a lot of First Nation communities don't have those economic opportunities put in front of them. But it all comes down to leadership. I don't truly believe that this falls on the shoulders of government. It's not their responsibility to kind of ensure that First Nations become independent. It's got to be collaborative. I mean, there was no reason, other than the well-being of our citizens, why we should have signed on to LNG. We could have denied it. We could have said no. Nothing would have changed. We would have still had the same unemployment rate, the big welfare list, the same social issues. But it was a conscious decision by our leadership back in 2003 and said, no, we're going to engage and we're going to make sure we do it on behalf of our membership. And the rest is history. And we're not looking back. It's a great time.
I've heard that there are a number of bands in BCs that are starting to replicate that, even in the Okanagan area too, right?
Well, those guys got a head start in us.
Oh, right. Fair.
They knew just because of the value of their land and location, but they also had engaged with pipelines long before we ever did.
Right.
Nobody had ever engaged on a scale of what we did in terms of a major project. Nobody ever done that before. So we made some mistakes, but I think what's happening now is a lot of First Nations trying to duplicate what we did.
Yeah.
Now, that's tough to do if you don't have the capacity, and more importantly, if you don't have the leadership.
Yeah, leadership is so important. I think people underestimate the value of true vision, right? Like people really, at least this is just my thinking on it. I really do believe that vision is it's manifestation, right? You manifest something into reality. You say, okay, this is where I want to go. It's like building a house, right? It's like you see a patch of land and you're like, okay, I'm going to plan out the house. I'm going to hire the labor. I'm going to get the materials. And before you know it, given enough time, suddenly you've manifested a house, right? And in a sense, what leadership is it's manifesting a different future. Because like you said, everything could have stayed the same. Nothing necessitated that it change except for leadership. That's it.
Yeah. And in fact, that process, dream to reality, was actually one of the darkest times of my life. It was a horrible time. Even though we're talking about reducing unemployment, we're trying to talk about getting rid of suicides without the programming. We're talking about all the social issues, but it was really hard to do. We were battling opposition, we're misinformation, rhetoric from all over BC.
Yeah.
My band actually went to court with band members, and it just tore our community apart. Nobody remembers that. I went to a public meeting once where they basically wanted to run our elected council out of town. And I was the only councillor that showed up. And I was watching our people just freaking yelling and screaming at each other. Those that supported council, those that wanted to boot us out. And when I saw it getting to the point where they had lost total control, half the gym hated me.
Yeah.
The other half supported me. So when I see everybody getting up and yelling and screaming, now I think it's going to turn to violence. I walked up and I took the mic away from the chairman, and I told the chairman, "You've lost control of this meeting.
Right.
And if you don't do something bad's going to happen. So let me get control back for you." So I turned around and looked at my people, and then there's people hanging off the rafters.
Right.
The place is packed.
Yep.
And there's so much emotion. So I told everybody, settle down. I said, I know these guys want us out as elected council. I know they don't support us. I know what they're saying, but you got to listen to them.
Right.
You got to be quiet. You got to behave. And I guarantee you, I promise you, council will respond. But you guys, you can't talk like it. You can't yell. You can't threaten each other. So settle down, let them finish, and just be done with it. But there was days where, I just didn't even want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
but
you're watching your community be ripped.
Great. Everybody's got jobs. Council's got lots of money now. But I remember those days.
That is leadership. That is leadership. I love that story of I could picture you walking up to the mic and settling the room down. That's leadership.
It wasn't fun though. It wasn't fun.
No. Well, leadership hardly ever is, because you're turning chaos into order, right? And that takes will. It takes an incredible amount of willpower to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to mend the relationships now. I mean, literally, at the height of it, brothers weren't even talking to brothers at the same dinner table.
Wow.
Friends weren't talking to friends. We're starting to come out of it now, but we're still trying to heal. But I still have a lot of animosity for those that stoked the fire. That had
can you tell us more about that? Yeah.
What we're trying to
happened?
achieve.
Tell us the story. This is the story. What happened? Like, why was your community ripped apart?
Well, because there was a faction of people that made claims that we were embezzling money, we were making secret deals with the government. In fact, if you look through the court case is called Wilson versus Switlo, SWITLO.
Okay,
and it turned into a libel court case. But this what happens. And I see this happening in BC, and I see it happening in Canada. This is what happens when you take a grain of truth and you kind of spin it.
Yeah.
You kind of bend it. And then you start to see factions believing in it. And now you don't know the truth. You don't even know the direct way to a solution. Because now you got people arguing that point that's kind of vague but incriminating.
Right. Yes. Cancel culture,
I see
right?
this in
Cancel
Canada,
culture.
right? Arguing over its resource industry versus the environment, right? Sending oil to United States at discount rates, sending LNG to the United States at discount rates. You want electric cars, but you don't want to do the mining.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I see this. There's a lot of misinformation happening. There's a lot of mistrust. And nobody seems to have a handle on, wait a minute, guys, here's the baseline facts. Can we start with that? And that's what basically happened to our band. It was, we just let it get out of control, and we didn't actually communicate. In my mind, we didn't communicate very well. That's one of the things when I became chief, I made it a point. I'm going to communicate well. I'm going to do it in person, in writing, on social media. I'm going to communicate so much that they're going to be sick of me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great way to lead, because then people understand your thought process.
Yeah, yeah. But by the time we approved the last LNG agreement that we put in front of our people to vote on, 92% in favor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that 8% would never vote for us anyway. So
Kim Jong-il doesn't even get 92%.
Wow. Don't compare me to.
I'm not sure that was a compliment.
We used to joke about that. We used to joke about that when the Wild Rose and the PCs were voting on unity, and they both got 95. The joke was, not even Kim Jong-il gets that, right? So tell us a little bit of your journey into politics. So you spent the vast majority of your life healing the wounds of your people. You succeeded in that. Then you decided to go provincial. Tell us about that journey.
The BC Liberals had asked me a number of times to run for them, and I always said no. I don't think I'm MLA material. Conservatives asked me to run as MP a number of times. I said, no, I'm not a politician. I'm just a chief councillor. And after I'm done with chief councillor, I'm going to go back to being a regular old citizen. But LNG Canada, we had signed an agreement with Chevron previously, but they never got off the ground. LNG Canada comes to town. And we can see LNG Canada has got the fortitude to actually approve their project. And we signed a really good benefits agreement with them. It actually guarantees us a future alongside LNG Canada. So we get invited to Vancouver. Me and my council get invited to Vancouver. We're going down anyway. I got my negotiating team with me. I got some staff people with me. I got some consultants with me. So we're going down anyway. So we say, yeah, sure, we're going to be there anyway. So we go down to LNG Canada's office, and we were sitting in the boardroom across from LNG Canada and their team. Andy Calitz was the lead guy at that time. So we sit down, and Andy Calitz welcomes us, and he says, Mr. Ross, can I talk to you in private in the next room? Okay. So we get up and we go together in the next room. He sits down and tells me, we are not going to announce FID. We're not going to do it. We don't know when we're going to do it. He said, but this is my promise to you. I'm going to do everything I can to kind of get this across the finish line. And man, it was just like I got hit by a ton of bricks. My whole future plan for the Haisla was all built up in LNG Canada.
Right.
And, I could see us walking away from the Indian Act. I could see everybody getting jobs. I could see everything. Everything was going to be better because of LNG Canada. So when that happened, Andy Calitz cried in front of me, by the way.
Wow.
It was that heartbreaking. And so we sat there and talked, and then we went back to spill the news. So when we got in the big boardroom, Andy Calitz took his team out. And so I sat there for a second. I said, you know what, staff, you can leave. Consultants, lawyers, you can leave. I just want to be in my council. So everybody leaves. And I'm sitting there on the council. I said, you know what? It's done. We're done. We got nothing. All those plans? No, because LNG Canada is not going to make FID. We don't know if it'll be next year, 2 years. We don't know. So we got to go back and we got to think of something else. And the jobs that we were enjoying at the time, nope. The money that we thought was going to come in, nope. Contracts, nope, nothing. We're done. And I just need some time to think of it. And so I told him, I said, you know what, guys, you guys should just leave. Go do whatever you want to do. Go, just leave. I just want to be alone. And don't bother talking to me for the next few days. I'm going to be really freaking angry. I'm going to be really mad. And so on their way out, my deputy chief counselor tried to turn around and he tried to say, "Hey, come on, Ellis. It's not that bad. Look on the bright side." And that was just the freaking wrong thing to say.
Oh, no doubt. No
and
doubt.
I just berated him left, right, and center. I still haven't apologized to him. I used curse words. I yelled. I told him to get the hell out and close the door behind you. And I was just angry. Anyway, a couple weeks later, the election was coming up, and I thought, you know what? I got to get to a higher place and help BC get LNG off the ground. I got to do something because I've done as much as I can here. LNG means so much to BC. It means so much to Canada. It means so much to my people. And BC, they need help.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what made my decision. That was a really heartbreaking decision for my family, for me, and for my people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So members of my community still meet me, and they still cry.
Yeah.
So very traumatic. But it's all better. It's all better today.
Yeah. Well, that's the story. That's the story that nobody tells about the shutting down the pipelines. The environmentalists go around and they claim they're doing this for the planet and for the indigenous people and really they don't care. It's all a pawn in their game. They don't care about those tears, and that must have been part of the anger that you felt.
Big time. When I was counselor, I was really keyed up on, getting our people to a better place. And when I was chief counselor, one of the first things I did was, as usual, I went to a funeral for one of my band members, and it was another band member who committed suicide. And I was sitting in the audience, and I was just thinking. It was a friend of mine. And right then and there, I thought, you know what? This is my fault. I did not offer that guy a good future. So from now on, while I'm sitting in this chair, next time somebody commits suicide, it's my responsibility. I got to do something. I got to get that guy into school. I got to get him into a job. I got to get into treatment. I got to do something. But I can't just sit back and watch. And so I said this at a conference once. And so I wanted people to stop blaming Canada, stop blaming BC, stop blaming, start doing something. And so I think that people truly understood that, if you trust me and you follow me in some of the initiative I'm trying to take you down in terms of the road we're going down, I guarantee you it'll have some payback. If not for us, it'll have payback for our kids and our grandkids. So slowly our people started to trust me, and I did deliver on some of the things I did that were quite out of the ordinary. Nobody had ever heard of a First Nation in our territory ever buying land before, private land.
Right.
Nobody ever heard of that, right? Nobody ever heard of a band like mine building a condominium or buying an apartment complex or, building our own public works building with our own money. Nobody ever heard of that before.
Right.
And so this is the kind of stuff that I made promises. I lived like, I'll do this. It's not out of our old playbook, but I guarantee you it'll build our future. And it worked out as planned.
I'm just kind of in awe right now.
Yeah, wow.
Me too.
You are a wise man.
You are a very wise man. Man.
So you've talked about your role on council, but you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast life coaching. Can you tell us a life coaching story that stands out to you? I imagine maybe the two are intertwined, but is there a story that you can draw out from a situation where you were able to help someone?
Not specifically, but I guess there's one in particular because I grew up, and I didn't try to hide the fact that when I was drinking, I was what you refer to as an orangutan. I abused alcohol. And when I abused it, I got very violent and just made a complete idiot of myself. And people don't believe me. Right? Yeah, but you look so well dressed and you talk so well. Oh,
Well,
like that.
it wasn't always this way. Yeah.
But I was coaching men's basketball. I used to coach 17 and under. I used to coach women's 17 and under. I used to coach women's 17 and over. But at one point, I was asked to bring back the 21 and old younger basketball team back. There hadn't been a team, so I was asked to bring them back to the Prince Rupert All Native. So I did. But I'm a disciplinarian when it comes to basketball or sports or anything for that matter. Disciplinarian, and I understood what it was like to grow up as a young Native kid on reserve. I understood it, and the rule I had for my sports teams was, you can make a mistake once in a while with experimenting with drugs or booze, but the minute that turns into a lifestyle, no, you can't do both. You can't be an athlete. You can't be a functioning citizen of society and abuse drugs or alcohol at the same time. You can't do it. And so everybody knew that the rules for my teams were pretty strict, and they had to abide by them. And a few of my players had been reported that they had gone out on a weekend and basically partied too hard and ended up in the streets. And it was, small community gets around, right? And it wasn't about these kids going out, getting drunk in the streets. It was, no, that's Ellis Ross's basketball players. They're the ones that did it.
Oh, and what's he going to do?
What's he going to do about it? And I didn't really care too much for anybody coming to question me on my approach or motives or whatnot. But when I got him into the gym that night, I didn't hold anything back. It was just like,
yeah,
you guys ashamed of yourselves? I mean, not only did you guys go out and drink, but you made asses of yourselves. I mean, look at everybody watching you. Look at your family, your mother, your dad, the kids watching you. I said, these kids are looking up to you when they go to the All Native, the basketball tournament. And what do? You're out there in the frickin' streets, drunk, staggering around, fighting. Have some goddamn dignity. And so the gym's quiet because people used to come watch our practice. And I realized that time we were maybe raising hell for about 15 minutes. The whole gym was just transfixed. In the corner.
Right. Yes.
And so afterwards, I just said, I turned around and said, that's it. I turned around and I told my players, get on the wall. And that night I just worked the hell out of them. Wind sprints, go-go's, and it was a lesson. You guys want to fool around? Go ahead, but you're going to pay for it. If you want to play on this team, you're going to pay for it because this is what happens to you in life.
Mm-hmm. You pay
Jerk
for
around
it.
too much, you pay for it. A lot of those kids, though, that I coached 1700, a lot of them took the lessons I taught them, and they still remember them.
Are they living by them?
They're living by them.
Ah,
It's beautiful.
wow.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really.
Can I ask you?
There's a picture of me all Native talking to these young guys in the timeout, and it's a timeout. And when we got that tournament, we actually won that tournament. We came from nothing. We came back. We won that tournament, but it took a lot of discipline. So in that picture, it shows me. I must have been yelling because there was a vein sticking out of my
Right.
On Facebook, somebody asked, I said, oh my God, is he mad? And somebody said, yeah, I'm sitting on the other side of the gym and I can hear every word.
You are the Canadian Coach Carter.
Yes. Yes. So, okay. So I have a question. I have a question. I've struggled with alcohol and substance abuse, like primarily tobacco, like a lot of smoking. And I'm wondering, you said, you really described when you were describing how you were when you used to drink. I really resonated with that. There's definitely and I don't know if you want to call it an anger in me or probably fundamentally an insecurity that I'm covering up with anger. But how did you get through that? I'm working my way through it, and I feel like I've made a lot of progress. I'm not fully on the other side, but I'd love you to share that with the audience and frankly with myself.
So by the time I was 14, I was already experimenting with drugs for a couple of years, and I realized I'm going to amount to nothing. So one night, and I was standing around outside my fire hall, and I just decided, no, I got to do something else. So I decided to play basketball, and I became quite good at it. And so I devoted everything I had to running, training, until I hit my 20s, and then I turned to alcohol, which was kind of sociable, right? Only on paydays.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. But by the time I hit my 30s, I was basically drinking every night. After work, I just have a few beers. A few beers meant 8 or 10 beers.
Yep.
Every night. And then on weekends, not just paydays, I just get super drunk, super wasted, and I go out and do the stupid guy things like fighting and arguing and.
Yep.
So by one morning, and this wasn't passed down behavior. These were my choices. I decided to try drugs. I decided to stop. I decided to drink. I decided to stop. I don't blame this on anything or anybody. It was my decision. But one morning in my early 30s, I woke up, and based on the events that were described to me, because I didn't remember doing any of it, I realized I'm going to lose my family.
Right.
I'm going to lose everything that's dear to me. So right then and there, I decided, that's it. I'm not going to drink anymore. That there's something bigger that I've got to think about. And that means, being a man, number one. And number two, looking after my family. I don't want my family, to repeat what I'm doing here. This is not right. So that morning, I decided to quit, and I haven't touched a drop since. Well, actually, that's not true, because last year at a Liberal function, I ordered a cranberry soda, and somebody gave me a cranberry vodka by accident, and I downed it. I damn near blacked out.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I have touched the drop in 20 years.
Wow.
We'll let that one slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I did it.
So you just decided to do it, and you just followed through with it. It was as simple as that.
Yeah, but
did you ever look back? Were you ever like, oh, I really wish I could drink again? Or is it just like, nope, that's just not me anymore?
No, because I'm like everybody else, right? I tried stop drinking once in a while. They call it being on the wagon, right?
Yes.
It never works when you say it like that. So I made a conscious effort of saying to myself every single day, I don't drink. Right? I just said it. I don't drink. I think it. I don't drink. And so a few years later after that, I was always scared about thinking about booze, looking at booze, being around booze. And I went into a pub one day for lunch. And I sat there. I just got the smell just sickened me. And I used to love the smell of beer. I used to love it. But then when I got in the pub, I just, man, that smell. Just can't stand the smell of booze anymore. But even today, every day, I make sure I say or think at least once, I don't drink. And that's what kept me going all those years. So I never had to think about, should I have a drink or what would happen if I had a drink? And so it's just an affirmation, I guess.
How old were you when you made this decision?
Probably 30 years old, 31 years old.
Wow.
But I was already a family man for about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not a proud part of my life.
Well, no, I honestly, I don't think people know how many alcoholics there are out there. Just functioning people going to work, and yeah, like you said, they're totally normal on the outside, and they just go a little harder, and people just assume that's who. But they're out. Like I'm talking about the woman who comes home after her really intense day and drinks 2 bottles of wine. Like 2 bottles of wine is not healthy, but these people exist and they do it every night, right?
What I couldn't understand is on the last 2 or 3 years of my drinking. I was not a nice guy when I was drunk. And yet the people that were around me, they didn't invite me out the next weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't I try to beat you up the last time? No? Well, why do you want to go with me again? Why do you invite me out?
What do you think it is? Why? What is it?
I don't know. I always had a temper to begin with, right? But when I drank it, especially if I drank the hard stuff, but I don't know what attracted. I mean, if you were sober and somebody got violent with you, regularly, you wouldn't want to hang around with that person.
No.
Seems like a rational decision.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I don't know. There's something about alcohol that I don't know what it does to thinking.
Yeah, you're right. I love that insight. That is so good. Okay, so
me and my wife talk about it all the time, by the way.
I wonder, this is purely speculation, but I wonder if it's because if you were behaving worse than them, it justified their behavior. As long as they weren't the worst one, we'll keep him around so that
he
I'm
makes
not
us
as
feel
bad
better.
as him.
Oh, I like that.
Jeez. It's actually not bad. It doesn't say much about my friends, though.
Well, I don't mean to offend anyone. Again, pure speculation.
Well, I'm going to ask him that, though.
Well, yeah, let me know. I'm curious.
Yes, we would like to know. So we have about 5 minutes left here, and I've just really, frankly, I say this to Zach all the time. We have the best job in the world. We literally get to talk to people and just learn things like we've learned today. Like, you've shared so much wisdom with us. I'm blown away, but I want to give you an opportunity to tell my listeners why you want to lead the BC Liberals as well.
Well, it's not necessarily wanting to lead the BC Liberals per se. It's about going back to the original topic of this broadcast. I've grown to love BC. I've grown to love the services. I've grown to love the people, the diversity. And I don't believe all the negative things that are being said out there about Canadians in general. I don't believe that. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to make this place a better place, especially in terms of the uncertainty we're heading into. Not me necessarily, but the young people. I mean, I don't think people truly appreciate where we're heading. The economic uncertainty, the deficits, the debt. The cost of living is just going to keep going up, and nobody has seemed to get a handle on that. But there's some things that I do believe in myself that I'm not even sure if I'm a BC Liberal. I'm not even sure if I'm a Conservative. I'm not even sure if I'm an NDPer or a Green. Because if you take out certain components of every party's ideology, there's some good things with every party. There's some bad things, of course. But I don't think that BCers should be split politically. Ideology, yeah, sure, go ahead, split yourselves. But politically, I mean, why? When we got the chance to actually go down a different path than, say, a path that Venezuela went down.
Yeah.
Say a path that Detroit went down, or Greece. I mean, if we go down that path, it's not necessarily my generation that's going to suffer. It's going to be yours and your kids and your grandkids. And so I'm basically doing this as more of a way to tell BC, you know what, we've really got to think about our status today and what we think about what BC is going to look like in the future. That's mainly why I'm doing this.
Oh, well, I think you should clip that and send it out in an email to the entire membership.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, he'll send you the clip.
Send me the recording.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much, sir. I'm blown away by you. I've known a lot of politicians. I've worked for Stephen Harper, Jason Kenney, Ronna Ambrose.
Wow.
And I've never in my whole life met someone that I respect more in terms of wisdom. I could say that with absolute certainty. So thank you. I didn't know you really that well, and you came on, and I'm blown away.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to The Canadian Story. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The CAD Story. That's The CAD Story. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let's work together to remind Canadians how great their country is.